Hi.
We're
Yeah.
already at channel, it's fine.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Greeting.
Hello.
Like my name.
Hello
My
there.
name is Vagabonde or Marianne or Kickbutt DM, however you know me. And today we're gonna be playing Legends of Methis, my homebrew campaign in my homebrew world, which changed the time. So for those of you out there that are here with us today, I appreciate you being here because we literally just changed the schedule for this campaign, so bear with us. Also, D&D Play 20 is an amazing community of nerds and misfits like me, us, whatever, and nerds, and
All of the above.
very nice people. Everybody's crazy, but everybody's good crazy. So join us. We have a bunch of games coming up, a bunch of opportunities for you to play, and even if you just want to watch, chill, and meet a bunch of nice people, join our Discord, which will be posted in the chat very soon.
It will?
Yes.
Ah!
There we
Very soon.
Okay, thank you.
And we do have our very first sponsor, don't we, Peter?
We do? Who's that?
Good.
For the
Jonathan, tell us about our sponsor.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Is this a main sponsor?
We are sponsored throughout the month of October by AwesomeCCG.com. This is a wonderful, wonderful cards, collectibles, and games shop, and they've seen fit to give us some sponsorship this month. During this month only, you can go there and use the code word D&D Play 20 to get a 10% discount on any items not already discounted by sales. Can't beat that. And they have some excellent deals there. Haven't checked it today, but last I knew they had 40% off dice sets. They had, well, just a ton of stuff. High quality stuff. So make sure you check that out and use that D&D Play 20 code word to get your 10% off. Thank you. All right, I'm out.
Thank you, Peter.
All right.
He's out. He leaves the game.
So, back to our tech guy. We're not showing the city where we are.
Yeah, that guy.
Whoever the
We
tech
see the
guy
outskirts
is,
of the city.
his ass later.
Hey, look.
I'm teasing you.
I'm trying here. I'm doing a million different things. Not really.
I know. I'm teasing you.
Okay.
In the meantime, one of my rules as the Kickbutt DM is if you do a recap and if you do a good recap, you get a reroll point. And reroll points are kind of like inspiration, but you can force them to you can use them for anything. You can use them for forcing the DM to reroll, for damage, for anything goes. And so if you want to earn those precious reroll points against the Kickbutt DM, you gotta do good recaps. So, who's gonna do it?
No.
Good recap.
Not it. I did the advertiser.
Surprise.
I guess start dressing up for the advertisers. Doing skits.
You get a reroll point.
Nick,
Hey, do I get a
give
reroll
the
point?
Tech guy a reroll. You should get the tech guy reroll point.
Alright, so Nick wants to get the reroll point. Nick, go ahead, do us the recap.
Nix is the only one that volunteers as tribute. Nix will take that. We'll take that reroll. So, in Nix's notes, they escaped the labyrinth. Woo! They managed to, with a leap of faith from Cinder, they managed to pass the John of Sphinx's test and went to part 2. They thought it was over. They thought that it escaped. And then this giant sphinx presented them with a second test. And this one was very confusing for Nyx. It involved very peculiar little creatures that held the information they had, but they needed to be approached with caution. After, yeah, there you are. There. They bookworms, I believe. Nyx.
They look like tapeworms.
No, Nyx. I identify them as bookworms.
Not around.
I'm glad that Cinder isn't around right now.
Speaking of Cinder, during this test, he almost caused a catastrophic fight as he ran towards a very forbidden section and danced atop it. Lorcan had to forcefully remove him from the shelf before chaos ensued.
Try to.
He tried. He failed.
How did he almost cause catastrophic? I don't remember this.
Yeah, okay. Convenient selective memory is what it's called. Nyx doesn't forget. And the group was stumped. Even Nyx was a bit taken aback. She had never really read or seen anything like this before. But sometimes, and Nyx is starting to understand this, sometimes the simplest solutions are the most efficient. But they are the ones that are always overlooked. As it turns out, the book that they needed was underneath the giant sphinx the whole time. All they had to do was take it. But they basically took every other option before that. So that's fun. That was a learning experience for Nyx. The book itself was exactly what she needed. It detailed the forgotten invention of the god of invention, which was an astral skiff. It was considered maybe one of his only failures, but it wasn't understood why he would create something like this, what its purpose was. But it was clear that this astral skiff had the potential to travel even into the depths of space, which is very interesting for Nyx.
Very interesting.
Yes. However, and this was the part that Nyx didn't like, it was that the prototype that Dylan made was buried underneath the wastes in the north. So that was a bit of a blow to her. Then she took notes on other entries in the book, which detailed a hot air balloon schematic, I believe, and it allowed Nyx to formulate a plan to effect necessary repairs to said balloon that was displayed prominently in the council area at Hero's Rest. Powered by continual flame, Nyx sought to understand how to make the balloon work, how it could be improved and made safe for travel worthy. She was a little bit annoyed at how Dragonborn have this unnecessary need to throw small people, just cause. That maybe this was just because Arca is just like kind of Dragonborn. Maybe it's just a cultural thing. But when Arc got offered to get Nyx up there, it's not what Nyx had expected, as she was catapulted up. Nyx took a look, took notes, started effecting the repairs, and managed to, it was a 2-day affair, managed to fix the bottom of the balloon so they could actually stand on something. And the cap on the continual flame was also fixed. So then they had a way of directing the balloon. Nyx never forgot the words of the Sphinx, however, which were to give the creator, when we see the creators, to give them its regards. Not, she never forgot that, even as she was effecting repairs on the balloon. So, with the balloon fixed and with proper permission given, it was affected by the idea of using the balloon. The excuse, or the main reason, was to use it to fly the winner over the city of the upcoming fight. Arca's rematch with her opponent. Winner would be flown over the city and regaled for their prowess. And that brings us, I believe, to said fight. After effecting the last repairs on the balloon, the group rushed to the arena and is about to bear witness to either justice or just outright audacity. So, take it away, Kickbutt DM.
That was good. That was good. I will award you your well-deserved reroll.
Woo!
Regretfully.
Regretfully. Reluctantly.
I think last time you guys had just arrived at the Grand Arena, where there was already a face-off. On one end of the arena,
They took someone's face off? How are they barbaric?
had
They're your people.
a half red dragon fighter champion. And on the other, we have that man known as
He can be known as that man. He does not deserve a name.
Boo! Then Nick starts heckling him.
Antos Nako.
Who?
Antos Nako.
Antos Nako.
Neckle?
Knuckle.
Nickel.
Nettle. Nettle. Oh,
Netty. Gotcha.
yes. He's an irritation. It's fine.
Are you trying to talk, Peter? You're muted or
That would explain it.
No.
No.
Peter turns around. We were muted this whole time, guys. Let's do it all again.
I was pulling a Belvedere.
Huh?
I was pulling a Belvedere, talking to myself.
Oh, alright, okay, cool. So, we are going to witness the fight between Accra and Antos. Now, two things. One, this place is packed. You guys got a good seat, but it is packed.
Hella chocker.
It is absolutely packed. And Accra, you can see the fury in her posture, in her eyes.
Nexus, hide!
And she's focused, she's focused on him. And on his end, he's relaxed. He's got a cheeky smile. And we have a commentator that starts introducing today's fight. And again, most people, like you, boo Antos. Because of the rumors and the general love for Accra's fighting. Obviously, they cheer immensely for Accra. The way we're going to do this, however, is I'm going to play the fight and describe the fight to you, but you guys are going to do the roll.
Oh, no.
Each roll is going to be done by one of you for both Accra and her opponent. It's going to be in your hands. What's going to happen? And in the meantime, if there is any semblance of cheating or anything like that, every round you guys are going to be able to roll to try to perceive if there is something unusual happening.
How close are we to the fight?
You are on the front row.
How close is that to them?
So,
Specifically.
right now, I need to do angles. So you are about um 40 foot up from the bottom, and you're 35 foot. They are 35 foot into it.
So
you're probably about.
we're definitely out of 30-foot range.
You're in 60 foot range. Over is 30, less than 60.
That's not helpful.
Why?
Because I wanted to know if we were in 30-foot range.
No. Nobody is meant to be in 30 foot range.
God damn.
So it is going to be on everybody. And you won't know who is going to. You don't know who is going to, who you're going to be rolling for. I'm not going to tell you if you're rolling for the opponent or for Accra before you roll.
No, that's mean.
So you're going to roll, you're going to tell me the result, and then we're going to know what happens.
No. I'm not gonna be responsible for that 20 for fucking Antos Nettle. No, thank you.
I like a little chaos.
Mr. Nipple, did you just call him Mr. Nipple?
You hear what you want to hear there, Logan.
Ah.
I know.
Okay.
I'm gonna call him Mr. Nipple from now on.
That's fine.
All right.
Do we drag all our tokens out? I already did.
Do we need to drag our tokens out?
You do not need to drag your token.
How are we going to roll initiative?
You're not.
Oh. Well.
We're not initiativing.
I hit and step and sneak into the middle of the...
You're gonna get murdered.
He's just gonna get fucking thrown out.
Of the arena.
There's a force field.
I dispel magic, hit and step, and move to the middle. I'm kidding. I don't have dispel.
What level is it?
I don't even know if I have it.
Okay,
But
let me just check real quick.
oh, I do.
What I'm just double checking that everything is correct. Because roll 20, you guys know me. And roll 20 absolutely surprises me.
Really? Anyone know that?
Roll 20 rocks.
And it's doing it again.
What's doing what again?
It is despising me. It is not working.
User error.
What?
Nothing?
What are you saying?
Just refresh.
No, that's not it. There was something I had made sure to include, and it's not working. Oh my days. Okay, guys. Tell everybody your thoughts on what's happening right now, because I have to fix something pretty bad. Go on.
We all go quiet.
Don't do
Yeah, we
it
all
to
like, no me.
I will kill
Internal monologue.
Okay.
Nyx is worried about Arca, like she doesn't know how she can help, so the next best thing is that she's got to try and keep an eye out for any kind of interference. So she has something that may be able to help spot the unseen, but she's not sure if that's going to be enough. She looks over to Nexus to see how he's doing. He knows that this is probably a bit more jarring to him than it is for her and the rest. She really hopes that she can help. She's just really nervous. That's Nexus' thoughts right now.
Alright, so what is Cinder thinking about all this?
Oh, Cinder. That's me. Cinder is thinking, wonder if they sell hot dogs here. And he starts looking around for a hot dog guy.
The Nix is looking around concerned. He's looking.
What kind of place is this?
Right. Okay. Good. Gotcha. I fixed it.
Fix what?
No.
I fixed the problem. What was happening? So we can start. I want all of you to roll initiative so we can have an order of what order you guys are going to.
Can't roll initiative. We're not on the map.
Not be in the initiative, okay? I want both of you. I want all of you to take note of the other.
Oh, right, so we just need to take. We don't need to just roll on the turn counter.
Yeah. You're not gonna be.
Okay. So do we use our normal modifiers? Like.
Yeah.
Advantage on initiative.
All that fun stuff. People funny right now.
I'm looking. People are so pushy. I got a 4.
Alright, 4, dirty 20, and 16. Alright, so Ramon, you're gonna roll first, please. Roll me. Oh, but this is not.
From what?
Plus the D20.
Everyone?
Ah.
No,
It cut you out.
Ramon for now.
He was like, come on, roll. I'm like, yes.
No, I finished it. I must have gone too far that far.
Yeah. That's a 15.
Alright. 15. Let me double check something real quick. Alright, so that is incorrect. And so I now want Jonathan to.
Oh, one thing before that happens. Could Nix have done one thing before this all started? She just wanted to do one thing. She would have grabbed, grabbed her goggles and kind of like put them on and just kind of like tweaked it. Come on, where's the setting? I installed it last night. She's going through it, and it clicks on the right. It gives like a little spark, and the lenses tint over with this ethereal glow. So all she's doing is just casting see invisibility through the goggles. And she goes, got it.
What's the
So
range
she can
of
see
that?
as far as she can see. As far as I'll show it to you. Yeah, it doesn't have a range. It's just for duration you see invisible creatures. Yeah.
So yeah, her hair catches fire. Okay. Do you give me
Why is my hair on fire?
Sparks.
Set your hair on fire.
You're not allowed to use magic in here, little
No,
gnome.
Cinder set your hair on fire. I mean,
Okay.
Why though? Why? She's trying to help.
She set her hair on fire.
No.
Yeah, you have to roll for it. You can't just set her hair on fire.
I didn't set her hair on fire. She put on the goggles and sparks flew.
Oh, I see. Okay.
She set her own hair on fire.
She's not that bad at what she does.
No, the hair didn't set on fire.
Thank you. Continue.
What was
16.
your D20 was a 16.
I got a 16.
So. Peter. I need you to roll me
11.
a D20. Yeah, okay.
It's already on it.
Alright. 11.
11.
11.
It's better than my first roll.
And I need Ramon to roll
I really don't like how she's rolling. Like she's going, roll for me, and then she doesn't say what's happening. Oh, I hate that.
I will.
I also dislike that.
Will.
And she smiles. Like she's just smiling constantly.
Fill out perfect here.
Gross. 4.
Oh, okay.
I hope this goes to. To Squall. I have a 4.
And then Acro just disappears into the dust.
Okay, so. I would like all of you, as in your characters, to roll me perception.
Oh.
Let's
Next!
do this. Next. Okay, she
And
can
I
guide
will
us off of
roll-
this, right?
I will roll for Nexus because it's a Nexus.
She can she guide us off of this? Or is this like an impromptu
no,
thing?
This is a
Like an instant thing.
yeah.
Basically.
Well,
Okay.
Nexus rolled a nat 1.
His nat one's better than ours.
Nexus, no. Ooh. Okay, the first one's better. Like that.
This is a test roll. Ah.
The test roll gets a nat 20.
No, I'm trying out a new set of dice.
Okay.
So 8, 4, 6, and
Hang on.
15.
no, he's already rolled
Oh.
his 8.
No.
26.
Oh, yeah.
What?
26.
Nat
Okay.
19.
Yes.
It's a nat 19.
So only perception first. Alright. So, you
With a
all see,
Like-
including Accra saw this too, that he's doing something with his hands.
he's doing something with his hands.
Yeah.
Nix. Okay. With that, like her little goggles went just like did like little did like the zooming in. What is he wearing? I need to know.
I will show you what he looks like.
Okay. But I need to know what he's wearing. Okay. Oh. Oh, it's. Oh, he's not. Okay.
That's a
Oh,
good.
is
not
that
wearing much.
is he wearing? Is that belt? Is that metal I see on his belt? Am I correct?
Yes, but it's not directly on
Good.
his ear. It's between
Okay.
Heather and his.
That's fine. That's fine. What else is he wearing? So that's all. That's all I can see.
Yeah.
Cloth. Okay. Let me just check something. That's fine.
So you all see he's doing something with his hands.
Is he?
It's on his turn.
Is he not allowed to use his hands?
Not to. We're talking magic. He's using some sort of magic.
Okay.
Use magic.
Do you believe in magic?
2 different tongues. Woo.
Yeah. We're rebels.
We're rebels.
Oh. 3 different songs. No, because I'm on. I think I'm on
Singing the songs of my age.
If you don't have anything, you don't have anything. It's
A reaction. Okay, my bad then. No, go ahead. I thought we
can
could do
shout
something.
You can say something. You can do that, but it's a reaction.
No, that wasn't clear to me. I thought we were doing something. Okay, if there's a reaction, Nyx that spots it is going to she's gonna try and call out to Akra, and if she can't communicate Nexus, she'll point it out so he can warn his mom because he's got a deep voice. She goes, Akra, watch out! And then she like, Nexus, warn your mother! She like jabs him.
Alright, so we're gonna see the consequences of.
How loud are they?
Let's see. Nyx, give me how loud you want to be. Give me
As loud as possible.
a charisma.
Really? Charisma. Really? Charisma. To be loud.
Strength, belt it out. No, I'm joking.
Constitution
To
then.
Really?
belt it out.
No.
I mean, I guess it's like a performance. Like
Do you want a constitution?
Gross. Charisma's
Gross.
great. 16.
16 would be loud enough for her to hear, though you notice she doesn't really react to you. It seems, from what you can see, because you rolled a 26 perception, she caught on as well.
Ah.
So, let's check what happens. I need Jonathan.
Yeah.
to roll me a d20.
I did 20. I got a nat 20.
Well done.
Is that
I don't know
good?
if that's good or bad.
That's
We don't know
that's
if it's
save.
good.
You saved her. You saved her. She got a nat 20 save.
She got a nat 20
Welcome.
saving
Sick.
throw.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
She saw it coming and she rolled a nat 20 saving throw. And that, I believe, will be his turn.
He'll be stumped. He'll be like, "What's going on?"
Yeah, I don't think you could do anything with bonus action.
Good. Serves him right.
So yeah, you
think
rolled a
that's
nat
squash.
20. So, and he sees that he resisted whatever he tried to do. He smiles with a falter, and he stays right there and kind of gestures her forward. Knocker does not hit around. She storms forward. I need Peter to roll me a d20.
Above the table, what's his name again?
Antos.
Mr. Nipple.
Anthos.
What's his middle name?
Nipple.
Nipples skull.
No, I didn't give him a middleman. He doesn't have one.
Yeah, he has one now.
Right, it is now
Sorry,
Nipple.
And Antos.
It's hidden.
Nipple.
15.
A call.
Alright. Okay. Uh. 15. Plus, yeah, I want
It's-
Jonathan to roll me. No, sorry, Ramon to roll me 2d6s.
Oh yay. What level is that from? I'm just curious.
Six.
It's not necessarily level up. I didn't see. All right.
6 points of damage.
Boo.
Um. All right. So you see that she slashes at him. He doesn't seem phased, so he just does it again. I need Jonathan to roll me a d20.
A d20.
No pressure.
A 2.
Ah,
A 2.
a 2.
That's a fail. If I ever saw one.
It went well and then it went bad.
Reroll? Reroll?
Are we allowed rerolls for this? Because it's not our fight.
It's not a roll, right?
Rolls on your turn. Yeah.
Gross.
And
Sorry,
as
I
she
cried.
slashes, you see her roar. I want Peter to roll me a d20.
Nineteen.
Alright. And again, you see that he doesn't seem phased.
I hate this.
So I want Ramon to roll me a d20.
Ramon is very, very reluctantly gonna roll this d20. He
And
doesn't like
Jonathan
it.
to roll me a d20 too.
I also need to roll a d20.
That is
Keep your
18.
arm.
Sorry?
18.
15.
Okay, 18 and 15. So the winner of those two rolls
Would be Ramon.
would be.
Is squash. Great.
Yeah, it would be Ramon. No, wait, Ramon rolled 18, right?
Yeah.
I rolled 18.
I got
Unfortunately.
Oh, by one. Okay. By one, but yes, Ramon won by one. So I need all of you is your characters to roll perception again.
Oh, right. I got a 12.
Roll what?
Perception. This is only if you want.
Oh, I won.
Oh, I
Nexus.
want.
21.
Nice.
Oh, he sees it now.
So did Nexus.
Nexus sees it too.
It's reversed now. What's it go? We can it's our rolls, right? We can re-roll if we wish.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll do that. That was not good. I want to see that. I want to see as well. She's like,
Probably thinks he's a
probably
fail.
wouldn't have seen it with a 12. Not 20, bitch. All right, I'll take that. Or 27. It went from a 12 to a nat 20. You hear her say that? She's like,
And everybody.
yeah, bitches.
What is a nat 20?
It's in a goggles. It just rolls the digital die and
So everybody but Morgan see magic again. This time, he did a much better job hiding it, yet everybody thought it. This time, you see, he said it's more the way it's that he sees his mouth speak. You are like, you've all seen Draconic being spoken. It's not what is happening here. And I need Cinder.
Can I cast Dispel Magic on him?
You have to wait for him to cast
the
the spell.
reaction. You can cast the spell. You can try to cast the spell after it's happened. I
It's
still
done.
need to.
That's smart. Though.
Because he's got some kind of armor on him.
I don't know that.
Well, magic
Question,
isn't
are they-
affecting him.
Are
Or,
there any officials like a referee
Yeah,
like nearby?
there's stats on these higher platforms.
Where are we?
D20, right?
Perception.
Okay,
I haven't been rolling for them.
are we close to them or not? Where are our seats? For the referees.
One of them is caught on.
If we're close, she would
No,
actually.
the same one has been catching on.
Oh.
What?
Oh, it's. Nix was wondering how close we were to the referees or whoever's keeping an eye on the fight.
Can we have the other side?
100.
D100? Okay. 55. How close does that mean?
You're
Bring up-
halfway across the place.
No. Okay. She'll make a note of it. Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Since she can't get their attention, she do an arcana to see what he's trying to see what he's trying to cast? Since she got a nat 20 and perceived it spot on.
You can. Cinder, was 16 your roll?
Yeah.
Alright.
Ooh, okay. I'm not.
Think so. Yeah.
Ooh, Minx. Minx. It's an 18.
Alright. How much did you roll for your arcana?
18.
He's...
Oh, unless he's casting a 9th level spell.
I need to see if you have access to that spell. Give me one second.
Oh. It's that.
Oh. And if she doesn't know it, she'll at least want to record what
No.
what it looks like.
The artificers don't. Are you multi-class?
You didn't let me. You denied her the ability to. So
Oh,
no.
when you wanted to
She's
multi-class into cleric, no, we wouldn't have mattered anyway.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
So
matter.
she wouldn't have any idea of the spell even in books?
No, so I can tell you what kind, like school, and what kind of style spell is, but you wouldn't know the details. It's an enchantment of some sort.
Okay, she'll note that. She'll take whatever she can get. It's an enchantment. Alright,
It's an
gotcha.
enchantment. And do you see that one of the officials is watching? Let me just...
Did Akra see it?
Ramon, roll me. No. I know the answer to that. Akra did not see it this time because it was talking to her. If nobody, you guys realized it, but you didn't understand. Like none of you, in the middle of the crowd, like you don't know what he said. You saw that there was magic involved, but you don't know what he said. And you see that for a moment, Akra stops. So,
Gross.
I need Akra to. Let me double check. I want it was Cinder that rolled for her saving throw, but she can reroll if it fails.
Oh.
So I want.
Oh wow, look at this. Nexus Mom.
What kind of saving throw?
No, you don't need to roll a saving throw.
You don't know what saving.
You don't know
just need
what's
to roll
going on.
something.
I want Nyx to roll me.
Okay. Well,
You
this
don't
is
know
happening
what it
next.
is, you don't know the modifier that she's got, so just.
I know. Nyx will turn to Nexus because he's trying to enchant her. She's trying to communicate what she knows. Alright, so what's 15?
Okay, so you all see as she stops
Oh no.
for a split second
Oh.
before
Don't.
she grabs her sword again. And I want Lorcan and Cinder to roll me d20s.
A 13.
16.
Nyx? Sorry, I'll wait myself.
Okay. Nyx, roll me 2d6, please.
Okay.
Actually, roll me 4d6.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
That escalated. I'm afraid to ask why. 14? I was gonna say, is it? You said it was packed here, right? It wouldn't
Yeah,
be
it's
easy
packed.
to like make. For someone her size, though, would she be able to slip between people and make her way towards the referees?
Yeah, sure. You can try to do that, but we'll
All right, she'll try and do that.
in a second.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool.
I need Lorcan and Cinder to roll me d20s again.
Oh wow. 11.
And Cinder? d20?
2.
Alright. Alright. So you all see as
Oh great.
she slices through the first one, but the second one, it's such a wild myth. So unlike her. Again, I need Nyx and Lorcan to roll me d20s.
14.
3.
And
14.
alright. And again, another wild
How many
myth.
attacks does she have?
another wild miss. Now, while she was doing this, Cinder, you wanted to try to cast a spell magic? What is the range of the spell magic?
120 feet.
Oh.
What are you trying to dispel?
Any him.
Nick, he would know because Nick's called out to Nexus as an enchantment, so he would have some sort of idea there's some magical effect on her, like on her.
On her? So
Yeah,
Cinder,
I would
are you
argue
going to try to dispel her? Or
And Nick's would be like point at.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Can it go through the barrier?
that's what I was thinking.
Ah.
That's true. Can we interfere from outside?
I need to let me check.
Or is it a physical
It
barrier?
dispels the barrier.
Oh, alright. Which one?
It's a magical barrier.
Yeah, no, I meant like, can physical, is it stop physical or does it stop magical?
That's what I'm checking. Jesus.
Would the judges know the barrier's dispelled?
You don't know that.
Ways to get arrested, Caroline.
Yeah, no. You're.
I'd like to dispel the barrier and then thunderstep to him.
You can look. You can try to dispel the barrier, but I'm trying to see.
I cut this 3 ways.
It's physical, nothing physical.
It's like a wall of force, then.
Yeah, so I would say that you can cast a spell.
Okay.
So I need you.
No, you need to roll for it. What is this?
I don't need you to roll anything yet. I actually. How openly are you doing this?
Well, it's semantic and verbal.
Yeah, but you're a sorcerer.
But
I'm
you-
asking, are you subtle casting? Are you doing anything like that? What are you doing?
Oh, well, I was just gonna hide it. I never did those things. Meta magic, you mean?
Kid- Yeah.
You have what meta magic do you have?
That's true. What meta magic options do you have?
I have twinned and extended.
Okay, that's
No.
fine. Alright, so
That's what I know.
I need
Is that bad or good?
Ooh, actually, yeah. I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give it to you. Cinder, you managed to dispel her.
Awesome.
And as Nix is trying to make her way through the crowd and disappears, and Akra misses wildly the swings, and you see Nexus is very nervous because he saw something being done to her. The Cinder waves his hands and speaks his words, and
You're a cheater! And that's how I cast it.
yeah, and she blinks a few times before the smile returns to his face. And
You got this! You're beautiful!
tucks his hand away.
I want to be Nexus's stepdaddy.
Ruined that.
I'm having a distraction. Alright. Okay, so I want the next round. I want Who was the last person to roll a d20?
Me.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't count though. It was a 13.
Oh, okay. Well, then in that case, it's a 13. Alright. Let's have a look. What happens? I want everybody to roll perception as your normal characters.
About right. 9.
No comment.
Wow, even I got better than you this time.
It was gonna roll on a 20 and then it hit the side of my screen and came back.
So, Nick's 18, 9,
And 6.
6. I didn't roll for Nix's. Nick didn't catch on this one. Actually, Nix, you have disadvantage. Everybody else has you with advantage.
Is this because she's small?
It's because you're running through people.
Okay. You look
Everybody else
lucky
has
there,
advantage.
DM.
Huh? Everybody else has advantage. Nix has disadvantage.
On what?
100%.
But what's this? Oh, perception. It's just a straight 4 for her, because she's got advantage on it.
Oh, okay, then it's a straight roll, yeah.
So we get advantage.
You guys do.
Oh, we just roll another die.
Yeah.
Ooh, 18
Ooh.
now. Went up by 10. No, that's 19. So I got +1. I can see something. I don't know what.
Am I supposed to be doing something?
No, I want Cinder to roll me. What's your DC, Cinder? Actually, that's not
My spell save DC 14.
okay.
Or called.
Right. So
Phone's not going off. for a
you all notice. Actually, Nick, roll me a d20. Let's see if you can.
Oh. Nat 19.
Okay.
19.
So Nexus.
Weird. Must be.
Cinder, what was your roll with advantage for perception?
I didn't do advantage.
Yeah, but you need.
$19.
Alright. So, only Nexus picks up on this.
Really?
No one else
Wow.
picks up what he's doing now. I need Cinder to roll me
Oh, okay.
How perceptive is this mofo? Like, Cinder's so far away. That's why you're asking what if he was subtle or not, because then he would have noticed him.
You guys rolling for him.
And to be fair, Cinder did scream, and I quote, "You cheater!" As he cancels the spell.
18 is enough. Just enough.
Nice.
Pass. You know that he just tried to cast a spell on you.
On me?
On Cinder.
On Cinder.
Oh, it's going down now.
Oh, you did now. Oh, you did now.
Yeah. You getting it now.
Damn.
Skeletal, Fearbog hands jets out toward him and slaps him in the face. Chili palm slap.
What?
Okay.
Confusion. What?
Can Nix?
I missed.
Can
what you trying to do?
I was gonna slap him in the face with a chili palm slap.
Oh, is it a cantrip?
Yeah.
You see it go to him, and it slaps him. It hits him. And you're like, ha! And as you're about to laugh at him, you see that it had no effect. It's like your magic was negated.
Yeah.
How's Nyx getting to the crowd? Is she making progress?
He's gonna take about 3 rounds to get there.
Okay, so in between those rounds, are we allowed to do anything, or is it just like perceive?
You're trying
Run.
to perceive and run at the minute.
Yeah, Lorcan's not seen anything, so it's great. He's just enjoying the fight these days.
Yes, Accra has been dispelled. Accra can do something. However, correct me if I'm wrong, but Chill Touch is a spell with a visual effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you see that the referees turn to the crowd, and you see that they raise their hands, and the fourth wall that is around changes.
Oh, great.
Negate interference from magic.
Magic now. Yes, great.
Yeah.
Right. And again, the clutching smile returns to his face, but I need Cinder and Nyx to roll the 20.
Ooh, 19 again.
13.
Not sure if that's good.
19? Okay, cool.
Mm.
I need you to roll me 46s.
Who?
Lorcan.
Me.
What?
Oh.
What? 46.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let me steal a d6.
No, actually just 2d6s.
Oh.
Let's repeat it. She crit.
5.
She critted?
Big battle.
Yep.
Shield.
5 plus 12 plus 5 is 20.
I like that.
I need. What was your roll? Was it 13? Yeah, I need another 2d6s from Cinder.
Am I within 60 feet
Oh,
of him?
yeah. But I still need you, not Cinder. I need Peter to roll me a d20.
Well, I'm just asking because I'm wondering if I can silvery barbs him.
Oh.
There's a magical barrier.
She hasn't said that yet.
The referees, up to you, try to slap him with your chill touch. They put up some magical anti-magic field, basically.
Can I silvery barbs the referee?
Anti-cinder film.
You can, if you want to go to jail.
I want to hit that referee with a reroll point. Can't detect that.
Actually, I forgot to roll for the referee.
Can I touch the force field now? Is it just magic that it's stopping?
Physical and magic, I believe.
Well, I'll find out more.
Find out. Takes a swing.
I need Cinder to roll me to the 6, so I need Nyx to roll me the 20.
I'm gonna die.
18. Oh, it's rolling high now.
15?
18.
19. Okay. I need Larkin to roll me 2d6s again. And this time. Okay. This time, you see Accra once, twice, 3 times slashing at him. Hacking at him. And he doesn't seem phased.
She's a wimp.
Does he take no damage?
Does it look like he's taking damage, but just not as much as he should be, or not at all?
Is he?
That's cheating. blatant cheating.
Is he doing damage?
What?
Is he actually doing damage to her?
Nope, you've not seen him attack her.
He's an illusion.
It's not going through him though, right? Is it going through him? No, it's actually hitting. It's actually making impact on him.
Yes.
Huh.
I would like. Who was the last person to roll?
Oh.
Sorry. Oh, no, Lorcan.
I think it
So,
was Lorcan.
Cinder and Nick to roll me d20s.
Oh no!
Oh, that was not cool.
Did you both get bad rolls?
No, he got a bad roll.
I got a nat one.
I got an average roll. Thank you very much.
Alright, okay. I want everybody to roll the perception.
Oh no.
With or without advantage?
Your characters, and the minute.
Nat 20. 23 total.
Nice.
6.
Not that it matters at this point. I can't do anything to him. I'm just going to start throwing myself against the barrier over and over.
I'll throw you against the barrier over and over.
Like a battering ram.
So yeah, you would have had advantage.
Who?
Everybody.
Everybody.
I don't need it.
Not a straight roll.
If I get an 18 instead of a 6.
Alright, so this time, everybody
Yes!
notices the same spell.
Which spell?
Sort of enchantment.
You guys don't know. Nick's. It's the enchantment she called out for. Cool.
Alright.
Is he casting it again, or is it just something that's always there?
It seems to be casting it again. And
Can
I
Nick's
need-
be at the?
Who was the last person to roll? Was Nick, so I need Lorcan to roll me.
Can Nick's be at the referees now?
Yes.
16.
That is.
Okay, that is not enough.
Not-
Cinder! Roll me a d20.
I hope that was a good thing.
Question. As I'm rolling this, can I cast Disguise Self on myself and make me look like him? So it looks like he's
Why?
cheating?
That's actually great. Oh my god.
Yes, you can.
That's what I'm going to do.
Can I test
Right.
that ring now? Like, is it just magic that it's stopping, or is it physical stuff?
Yeah, whilst Cinder takes his turn at seeing him cast a spell again, Cinder casts a spell on himself. Lorcan, are you going to throw something?
How far is the barrier?
You don't know. It's invisible.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll throw a stone.
A stone?
Yeah.
Okay, you throw the stone. Roll me the attack roll. Give me the
Nat
attack.
20 on the force field.
Yeah.
With the
With
stone.
Yeah, Lorcan's.
Attack?
It's an improvised weapon, so you will add your proficiency.
Only because I've got the attack roll.
Correct.
21.
Does a 21 hit you?
Hit me?
Yes.
Of course a 21 hits me.
Okay, roll
It
damage.
rebounds.
It
Right.
rebounds. Can I do
Apparently.
like, reflex towards with a 21? Can it hit someone else?
No, you didn't. You said you were testing it. You didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, but it
It's not the normal one.
gosh, yeah. Can I
Roll
deflect that rock onto Cinder?
Roll that.
I'm not Cinder right now.
Rude, and deflect that rock onto Cinder.
Roll damage.
I'm not Cinder.
Cinder. What's happening? My God.
Alright.
Next his mom's
What's the
life
damage?
hangs in the balance.
Oh no, what was it meant to be?
It's
1d4?
Yeah.
Mine's a +4 for
Yeah.
improvised weapon. What?
Cinder, take 8 points of damage and do my concentration save.
Wait, why is he doing a concentration save?
You just cast this guy's spell?
Is this guy's self not a concentration?
Is it not? Oh, that's true.
No, alter self is. Not this
Oh,
guy's
okay,
self.
okay, it's fine,
Woo.
it's fine.
You're fine.
How much damage?
8, you just need to take 8 points of damage. You're good, you're good. You're good.
This rock comes out of nowhere and hits you, Cinder. You don't see
Slaps
anything.
him.
Oh! Quit that! Ha! You can't beat me, lady!
I'm trying to win I'm trying to win this match. It's just-
Round about this time, Nick should be reaching the judges and she can point back at me and say, "Look! He's not really in the ring!"
I don't know what you're doing.
So,
Does the judge notice him?
not yet. They'll roll.
Alright.
Not yet.
On
We'll
their
see.
turn. Nix, this is the last round before you reach them.
Hey.
You all see that he spoke the spell again. And
Nice.
as he stands there laughing, you see he now moves towards her. He actually moves towards her.
Oh.
And you see again. I want everybody to roll perception. Let's see.
Perception again.
Yes.
Advantage.
Gross.
No.
No. Oh.
It makes have disadvantage.
I got an 8.
17.
Oh, okay. No. No, I don't know that's anything.
That advantage was saving me.
I got a 17.
Yes, Cinder.
Okay. 12, 8, 17.
She's cheating!
I want.
I'm cheating!
Who was the last person to roll me a d20 or
Oh.
d6?
Wasn't that Lorca?
Me? I
was
I
it?
rolled a 4.
It was Cinder. It was Cinder. All right. So next, d20.
Watch it roll high now. Actually, it didn't. It's still a 5. This one's just a
5?
5. Yeah.
5. All right. All of you, Lorcan included, see that seemingly at first glance he disarmed her, but as you look properly, she gave him the weapon
She gave him the weapon. How did I see that with an 8?
because Nick's rolled a 5.
Okay.
It was a bad sleight of hand,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
gave
you
him-
saw it.
Is she charmed?
You don't know.
Cool, this worked out
And
well.
she gave him the weapon and fell on her face.
So unconscious.
No, fell on her face. Just like tripped and fell.
Oh.
Like it seemed, it was made to try to seem that he tripped her and disarmed her, but
That he was, like,
you all
skillful,
could tell that that was not the case.
Ha!
Yeah.
I've got you now!
All right. Finally, before their turn, Nick, you reach the referee.
Okay. She will call out. Are they up on stands? Are they low?
Yeah,
I would assume so.
But I'm assuming at this point you got to the bottom of the ladder that leads to the platform where they're standing. You can't pass
So-
because there's guards on the
Yeah,
ladder.
so she'll go to the guard, like she'll look at the guards, and she points to the arena. She goes, "The judges need to stop the fight. There is magic being used. I have
You
proof."
You see that just like you, there's loads of people trying to say the same thing to the guards and trying to barge through to the judges.
Ah,
Gross.
that's good.
So, I would like you to roll me a persuasion.
Gross. Can she just...
I'm
Swap them silly.
I'm jumping up and down, waving my arms around, trying to make people notice me. Does that give him advantage?
Ooh.
Ooh.
That was actually very lucky for her. Could she guide herself, or is this like a straight roll? 100%.
I would say you could have because you were running there and you would have
Been
noticed
prepared.
the amount of people doing
Okay,
this.
she's like... go.
You knew you had to do something different to be heard.
Cool. That's great. 21.
The DC was 20.
Ooh.
Ooh, guidance. Damn it! She's like...
She says that. She says, I have proof. And that is the difference. You have proof. So one of the
Compared to everyone
guards
else who's
makes
just
a
saying.
little space for you and waves you through so you can climb up the ladder.
Oh.
So as you climb up the ladder, what do you say to the referee? There's two there.
There's two? She goes... She doesn't know how to address them. She goes... So, excuse me, honorable judges? She goes... That the fight should be forfeited. Antos is cheating. He's using an enchantment spell.
Okay. Which
I have
one
proof.
Are you talking to, or are you talking to both?
Are they both looking away? Which one? To both, I guess, in general. Yeah.
Alright. So roll me a wisdom save.
Okay, this is magic, right? This is not just a wisdom.
You have advantage,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Finally comes in handy. Every time I ask, she's like, nope, it's not magic. Nope, it's not magic. Nope. Wisdom save is... Ooh, I like that. Would have been, that would have been an 18.
Neat speaks, I
believe.
guess.
Hey.
One of the referees says, go sit back down in the audience, please. And he tries to cast an enchantment.
Suggestion? Yeah, so she
But
she
the
feels it,
other
like, cause she...
one- But the other one listens to you and nods. And immediately, I need Akra to do me something. So one of you roll a 20.
I'll do it. Oh, crap. I don't want to do it. The one time I roll high.
I don't want to.
That was a practice roll.
Alright, I need Nix to roll me a d20.
7.
Okay. Okay. So at first seems that nothing happens, and then actually, Larkin, roll me a d20.
Lorcan, okay.
What? 2. Okay. So Akra suddenly
It was balanced between a 2 and an 18.
It's good. We wanted it to be low.
It's Vortex Warp.
Good.
Vortex Warp! Indeed! The barriers go down, and Akra appears next to the referee, next to Nix, and to this other referee that just tried to enchant you. It's like, I'm not done down there. Sorry, she doesn't speak like that. Sorry. I'm not done down there. Let me go back.
That's better. She was waking up. She was enchanted. She's like...
And they say the fight shall be stopped until we have assessed what is going on here. We have something has been brought to our attention.
Nix has got hands on hips, looking at the judge that tried to suggest her. She's like...
I need Cinder to roll me a d20.
Go, Sander.
If the barrier's down, can I attack this
Nick,
guy?
what's your passive perception?
He just wants to attack.
Nick, what's your passive perception?
It's great. It's fantastic. It actually is.
Yeah.
It's a 22.
You notice the referee that just tried to enchant you try to cast a spell on Akra.
He does.
Subtly. He's trying to do it sleight of handy.
Can she try and interrupt? No, I don't have counter spell, but can she try and like distract him? Can she call out? Can she do something? She can react, right? She can do something.
Yeah.
She notices it.
I will allow you to shove him off. Try to shove him off the platform.
Yeah!
Not shove him. Can she kick him in the shin? Is that allowed?
Is this the bad one or the good
I
one?
want you to roll Nick's an attack roll. Huh?
Is this the bad one or
The
good
one, well, you don't know. She just saw the one that tried to enchant. Nick saw the one trying to enchant her. Tried to dispel her. Yes.
Ah.
Okay. Attack roll. Okay. If it was Nick, she probably would. If she could attack, it would be like a cantrip. To be fair, unless you think it should just be it.
Yeah.
One day.
So it has to be an unarmed strike or something.
An unarmed strike or cut it. Okay. No crossbows. Just
No.
kick to the shin. Okay. Okay. I
Too
tried.
quick.
Okay. 14.
14?
Reroll? I don't know if I should reroll that.
Reroll.
I can reroll that. Great. I'll do it. I'll try, and then I'll just leave it. See what happens. Ooh. 18. Much better.
Replay or reroll?
I did. Did it not show?
No, it didn't.
It didn't. You're gonna have to do it because it's glitching from now on.
I can't. I'll steal it. But allow me to steal it.
Steal it. Go.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Nick, you see it and you kick him in the shin.
Yeah, she's like, alright! She goes, stop that! Boom! It's like,
Yeah,
cheater!
And he goes, ow, ow! And you hit him. And I need Nick to roll me a 20.
Yeah.
D20s everywhere. 3. Take that,
Three.
mofo.
So, you see, he stumbles backward and falls to the...
Oh no! Murder!
into the arena.
What?
Taking, what are the roll? 4d6s. No,
Oh.
3d6s.
Seven.
Right, you take 7 points of damage. As
Like,
he
look it.
walks down the 40 feet into the arena.
I mean, I got 2 ones, so.
And the guards start climbing up the ladder, and Nate, you're grabbed by several guards. And everybody's not knowing what to do. There is guards coming in Cinder's direction.
Ah.
Okay.
Are you going to be taken by them?
No, I'm gonna thunderbolt jump
Alright.
right to the bad guy.
What happens when you thunderbolt jump from where you are?
Well, I'm gonna make sure none of my friends are close to me first.
Ah.
Yeah, thank you.
I was gonna say.
Thank you for being considerate of others.
Alright. Thunderbolt jump. You're gonna do it towards one of the guards. They're coming from opposite directions.
No, he's going to the judge, I think, right?
No,
Or Anton's?
yeah,
Anton's?
I'm going into the arena where the bad guy is.
Yeah, but it's from where you leave. I'll leave the destination. I get it, but it's from where you leave. So you're going to kill a bunch of people. You know that, right? A lot of these are commoners.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna jump into the arena.
Okay.
I'll take
And then do it.
before I hit the ground. I'm gonna thunderbolt jump This isn't Thunderbolt Thunderstep. This is Thunderbolt Jump.
I know.
So
I
it
know.
explodes where I arrive as well.
Yeah, I get you. So, alright, so you do it, you don't harm anyone, but you harm, let's see whether he passes your DC or not. Cinder, roll me a d20.
If this was my cleric, I'd be doing maximum damage.
Alright, he failed.
not-
Roll your 86 damage.
Oh.
Oh, wait, no, never mind. It doesn't take effect.
What?
Because
But
the
Cinder,
mofo is
you
invulnerable.
can put your
Did we
token
forget?
right next to him
Did we
whenever
forget
you-
that little detail?
Alright, fine. I want initiative with this chump.
Sure.
You can do that, but you'll lose. Because you can't hurt him.
So you can
Dispel him again!
So there's an
Sorry,
explosion, and then there's two of him. In the
Yeah.
middle of the field.
Where you are, yeah. Put your token where you want to have land. Lorcan, you saw Cinder jump into the arena and actually go through and a referee fall in. What do you do?
Good question. He doesn't really know. I mean, the refs just fell in randomly. Cinder has just jumped into the arena, and I'm like, the
Nexus is running towards his mom in the referee place.
Oh, I'll go after Nexus then.
Alright.
I didn't know he was running.
So, as Cinder,
Nexus, is it not easier to go through rather than around?
as Cinder lands next to him, and the referee calls out to Antros that he wants to see him. I need Cinder.
Uh-oh. This is where you use all your rerolls there, Cinder.
Wisdom.
Ooh. Alright. I need Lorcan to roll me d20.
Lorcan? Why Lorcan?
Jonathan.
No, I don't want to be responsible for killing Cinder. You got a 12.
No, Cinder's responsible for killing Cinder.
Does a 19 hit you? Cinder.
Yes, it does.
Does a 19
Yeah,
hit?
yes.
Yes, I have a 15.
Alright, so I need you to do me a charisma saving throw.
Oh.
You're a sorcerer. Believe in yourself.
Nat 20.
Yeah!
So you
Cinder!
see
Cinder!
he goes to grab you. He grabs you and he looks into your eyes and you feel this surge of energy to try to take you somewhere else. And he
Oh,
goes
hello.
out of existence.
He pops out
Ah!
But you, Cinder, you managed to remain.
Ah, crap.
He tried to plane shift away with you.
Well, now I look like I'm just him still standing there.
Yeah. He tried to plane shift away with Cinder. Cinder resisted it. And that is where we're going to leave it for today.
He just
Ah.
And now
That's
Cinder is him
Yep.
because the so you're in trouble. Oh,
So
you're
it
in
looks like he
big
tried to take
trouble.
his accomplice with him and failed, and now he's gonna get arrested.
You're in big doo-doo.
Yeah, and he tried to plane shift away. Has anybody any idea who this is?
This.
Yes. I want to see if Ramon has picked up on all the keys. Who is this?
Well, if he's able to plane shift someone powerful.
Ramon?
It's the Rakshasa, I think.
Rakshasa? Which one's that?
Yes.
Can I
want
just-
It's the magical.
inspiration for that.
Yeah.
Really?
This one is a real Rakshasa.
Wait,
That's why.
is that the ones with the
he's
with
disguising himself. That's why it doesn't look like he's taking hits. He is, but he doesn't look like it. It's a disguise.
I know how to get out of this.
It's the demons, the tiger-like
It's-
demons with the hands backwards that he
Thank you.
mentioned before.
Yeah, I was gonna explain it to him. Like, it's the one that I found the sword for in the safe
Oh, yeah.
in the
one that we
brothel.
ran away
That
from.
one.
Yep. There's one there, and there's one here.
I
And he
dislike
just
that
tried
there's
to
so
play
many
ship-
of them.
He just tried to play the ship to the nine hells with Cinder.
I think it was the plane ship that clicked in my head. Like, Nix is like,
Well
okay.
done, everyone. Today was a bit of a shorter session. Thank you everybody for
Sorry about
playing.
that, guys. It's my fault.
Hopefully,
Hi.
I forgot.
hopefully next week will be 2.5 hours normal, but we'll not have breaks during this game anymore. So the game will always be, instead of 3 hours with a bit of a break in between, it will be 2.5 hours with no break. Today is a bit shorter, so bear with us. And I hope you had fun. Nobody knew what was going on. You were all rolling. I was doing one roll each person, and you never knew who or what you were rolling
Who
for.
it was for. Yeah.
You were all doing very well. So, really well done, guys. It was fun. Cinder, you're in trouble. Let's see what happens next time.
I know how to get out of it, so
Alright, cool.
if I can remember the plan.
If you can get out of it, can you save Nix? Because she just kicked a shit instead of flying.
She just kicked the referee that seemed to be in cohorts with the dude.
Yeah. So he might be a demon. You never know.
We'll
and all I
see.
can say is, Cinder, don't pretend now and try and attack us, because we will attack you back.
Don't try and like do that.
Alright, Cinder, you need to write your plan to get out of this one. And we'll see everybody not next week, in 2 weeks' time. Again at 5 p.m. EST, now that the schedule is changing. There are a few games coming up. There is of Giants and Dragons tomorrow on the Discord. There is Elemental Chaos, both games with Belvedere on the Discord. There will be Citizens of Phandalin. There will be, I don't think there is Strixhaven this week, but there will, or Curse of Strahd, but there will be Dragonlance, I believe, on Monday, correct?
Oh,
Is it
yeah,
this Monday?
yeah.
Dragonlance is coming Monday here on the channel. So stay tuned. There also might be a one-shot Sunday this week. So join the Discord for all the latest news, what is happening, all the events. And thank you everyone for being here. Thank you Awesome for sponsoring the channel. Don't forget to check them out. They're amazing. And goodbye everyone.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.